Hey, Faraz, why don't you help me welcome people in?
Yes, for sure. And
Faraz, why don't you help me welcome people in? Okay.
Okay, I gotta find the button, Mike. Hang on.
See more people coming in.
yeah,
Hey, we got Joy Fettis, another plan academic in the house. Hey, Joy.
We got Taylor here. We got Patrick here. Joy, we already said hi to. David from Calgary. Um,
Luke is joining as well.
Patrick from Columbus, Ohio, in the house. Patrick's been here a few times. Thanks for coming back, Patrick.
Calgary's my hometown, so welcome to the Albertan. Woohoo!
All right. Awesome. Okay. More people are going to come in. I'm just going to ask my team to, I don't know, can Faraz or Joy, can you guys admit people? Faraz, can you
I'm
admit people?
I'm doing
You
that,
are.
yeah.
Okay, great. Going to turn that over to you.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's get started. In the sake of time, we have a lot of material to go through. And for those of you who are just joining us for the first time, awesome. Welcome in. Thanks to have, glad to have you here. So I want to say hello and hold on. I'm still working this stuff out. Pin me. And I'm going to pin this guy. Boom. All right, there we go. Christian Pikel. Christian's my co-host today, and I'm really happy to have him back. He's been on one of these with us before, earlier in the year. And I invited him in because Christian is an expert in project controls. He does a lot of work with organizations around North America, but he's got a specialty. His specialty is lean. Why don't you just say hi, Christian? Fill us in.
Well, hi everybody. Thanks for the intro. Yeah, I have been in and around construction projects for my entire working life, essentially, and migrated my way mostly through healthcare, which in the US market at least was one of the super early adopters of lean practices and integrated project delivery. So found my way into that method of delivering projects and have been doing that for about the last 12 years now in that way. So for a number of years working for a major national healthcare owner, and most recently in my own company, the Realignment Group, I work with project teams who are trying to implement lean practices, look at how we effectively put teams together and get them to work together nicely and improve how they are working together, and basically try to get things done more effectively and more efficiently with the available time and resources that we have. So happy to join you all, and thanks for having me.
Yeah, no, thanks, Christian. We appreciate you being here and sharing your expertise. And let's kick it off. So today here's the topic: 7 habits of highly effective schedulers. Okay, so just a little bit about why we're talking about that. Let me see if I can kind of put a little bit of meat on the bones of this structure. What are we talking about? Well, I've been lucky to have a lot of success teaching people software, talking a lot about Primavera P6, other scheduling tools, and that's done really well. But one of the things that we've kind of picked up the mantle of at Plan Academy in the last year is this idea of trying to instill not just technical tools and not just technical skills for people in project management, project controls, engineering, but also to try to instill some leadership. And when I talk about leadership, we're definitely kind of in this realm of, let's use some of these kitschy terms: mindset, soft skills, this kind of stuff. But I want to think about, I don't want to throw around all the buzzwords too much. But I do want to think about this as, we're in our careers here. We're in our careers. We're trying to do the best work of our lives. And I want to think about this maybe as like opportunities to think about new ways of being in our roles, new ways of interfacing with other people, new ways of doing some of this work. So that's kind of where this idea came about from. I have taught a lot of soft skills, but recently I've been having more and more. I've taught a lot of technical skills. That's what I wanted to say. But we have been having more and more conversations, myself included, as I go through my own personal journey about like, what are new ways I can be, new ways that I can be in the world, new ways that I can be in Plan Academy, new ways that I can be interfacing with people. And that's kind of where some of this came out of. I wanted to bring Christian in here because Christian has a lot of experience in his lean work where he is having these conversations with teams about communication, about where not just software and stuff, but like people, process, and tools. So that's a little bit about what we're going for today. Do you want to add anything to that, Christian?
No, I think that was great. Yeah, I think the soft skills is soft skills. They can be much harder than the technical skills when people are involved. Is really where it's at. So yeah, let's jump in.
Yeah. So what I'm hoping to do today is just have a conversation around some of these things and see if we can. I'm hoping to see if we can get a little bit of inspiration. I would love for people to find a little bit of inspiration in this discussions. And by all means, this is a discussion. So we've got chat here. Please feel free to participate. Throw out your ideas. We'd love to have a discussion and not just limit it to our own experiences. So here we go. Okay, so I am going to start with talking about, look at this, I got my iPad going, technological marvel.
Wait. Soft skills.
Soft skills, yes, sorry. That's why I brought Christian. He brings the funny too. So, all right, here we go. Our first habit. So 7 habits of highly effective schedulers. Okay, why did I pick that title? Well, I was deeply influenced at one time as a younger man. There is a very popular book, and here it was a very popular book 20 years ago, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And as a young man who was just starting his own journey into project management, I really liked this book. It was talking a lot about leadership, a lot about things that you can change within yourself, regardless of the kind of work that you're doing. And so I thought, let's see if we can have a similar discussion for schedulers, for whoever's on the call here working in this kind of projectized engineering world. Let's talk about these things. And so here we go. First one I came up with was, for schedulers, own the role. Okay, why did I put a picture of geez, I'm gonna forget his name. I'm having a problem remembering everybody's names these days. Neil deGrasse Tyson. Why did I put a picture of Neil deGrasse Tyson up on the screen for Own the Role? I struggled. I wanted to find somebody who really like embodies their job. And Neil deGrasse Tyson, I check out his YouTube videos, but he was somebody that I thought was a good model for this kind of thing. He sees himself as a scientist, and that's all he does is embody being a scientist. He's always talking about science. He's always correcting people about the scientific method. He is really pushing how important science is, how important it is that we are reaching out into this world of discovery. And so I thought he was a good model. He is somebody in my mind that he's like, I'm a scientist. Like, this is what I do.
Yeah.
And so why is number one owning the role? Well, here's a discussion that we've had. Schedulers. In my experience, we sometimes get trampled. We get trampled in project meetings. We are sometimes seen, because we're still struggling in this world where schedules are not the tools that they should be. They're not used to drive. Sometimes they're just used because there's a contractual requirement to put schedules together. Sometimes schedulers are seen in this kind of clerical kind of role. We need a schedule. You know how to make one, so make a schedule and move on. But what I want us to do is to step more into this role and think of ourselves as specialists. What do you think about that, Christian?
Well, when you said we need a schedule, so let's make a schedule and move on, the lean spidey hairs on the back of my neck stood up, and I was about to have a violent reaction.
Yeah, that's what happens.
Yeah. I mean, I think you're going down the right path. One thing that popped into my head with Neil deGrasse Tyson and the way you described that well is, in order to be able to own the role, you have to be able to really well articulate the role and the purpose. And then the other thing that popped into my head is doing that with enough confidence to be able to correct customers. Like, the customer doesn't always know what they're buying and why, and being able to explain, look, this is how I am beneficial to the project. This is what I do here. What you're asking for is not actually what I'm providing. So let's correct that and let me own this role, right? I think that's a really good example.
I think that's great. I think the word I want to, and I'm going to write it up here. So check this out. This is kind of why I did the iPad thing, so I could do stuff like this. I would like schedulers to think of themselves as specialists, like in the medical field. I'm a specialist in heart valve replacement surgery or something like that. Schedulers are specialists. They're specialists with years of experience working with a tool, understanding the data, understanding the semantics of what goes in there. I think stepping into that role and owning this idea of being a specialist, and maybe even talking about yourself as a specialist, could help us to step into the role a little bit more. I run into a lot of junior schedulers who are still just kind of finding their way in the world and, doing the things that they're asked to do. Go build a schedule. Okay, I just built a schedule. Here you go. It's done. A specialist is a role where you not only just do the task, but you own the job, and you don't see your job as narrow, like you said about defining the role a little bit.
Yeah.
Here's an example. You guys can see I have a piano here. So I play piano. Took years of music lessons, and I'm still taking music lessons. I'm still working on learning jazz piano. But it's in the last little while that I started to change the way the way I speak about it. Instead of just saying, yeah, I play the piano, I'm starting to think of myself as I'm a musician. And there's a difference there. I play the piano means I took piano lessons when I was 12. I'm a musician means this is part of who I am. This is part of how I want to kind of define myself or my life. So I see it as differently. And that's kind of what we're striving for here with this idea of owning that you're a specialist.
I think another good word you could add to that, this might be introducing some of my bias into the definition, translator, I think is a key. Yes, there's a specialist component to that, and there's a special way in which I think really good schedulers on projects become the team's translators of information so that different parties on the project can consume it effectively and work with it effectively.
That's a great thought. Specialist, translator. Just excuse me, I'm going to clear my throat. Really, I think this whole presentation is probably centered around this idea of owning the role a little bit more, stepping into it, feeling a little bit a little bit more gravitas in what you do and how you do it in the role. So I think we'll see this thread as we go through, but let's carry on. We got 7, so we're gonna try to get through them. And again, if there's any thoughts about what we're talking about, let's add them in the chat. Pardon me. Okay, so are curious. I mean, I don't want to sound a little bit too obvious here or anything like that, but there's something about I think I have this idea of some schedulers as I sit at my desk and I do what I'm told and I generate a schedule and I generate a report and that's it. And then I keep to myself and I just do what I'm asked. And what I'm aiming for here with curious is trying to cultivate some curiosity about the project, the people, the bigger goals, the different set of perspectives on what the work is about. And why in the world did I put up a picture of a one of these floating fortresses?
Are you curious how it stays afloat?
I am blown. I will absolutely tell you that I'm on YouTube watching videos about the construction of oil rigs,
Yeah.
and I am absolutely blown away by how this is possible, how it can
Yeah.
work, how heavy these things are, and they sit in the water and they float. Like, I mean, I understand the science, so they float and all that, but like it's still it's some sort of marvel of engineering that blows me away. I would love to visit one and just understand it or see them float one out or whatnot. That's what they're doing. I think this one's on a barge. Like, I'm really curious about things like that.
Hmm. Yeah.
I'm curious about the engineering as well, and that's my own personal thing. I was on one scheduling job that I mean, I learned so much. This one scheduling job was an infrastructure job. It was a tunneling job with a TBM, tunnel boring machine, tunnel boring underneath. It was here in Ontario, not far in one of the parts of Toronto, to install a large water main. And again, I was just really blown away. Like, okay, so you dig this hole, you sink this thing in the
Mhm.
ground, and you're gonna tunnel. And what I did is I soaked up all the engineering and now I can speak all the engineering to people and I baked it into some of my training. So there's benefits, but I'll for schedulers specifically, I'll also say that some conversations I've been having are that schedulers who do understand some engineering and can help to translate that engineering into project schedules, those people are going to be high in demand if they're not already, but they'll be high in
Yeah.
demand. So
Yeah. The curiosity gene, I lean into this a lot in my work with teams. I mean, I don't build schedules per se, but I do facilitate a lot of collaborative planning sessions that end up resulting in plans that teams use. And I mean, I've been in the construction industry now for longer than I really want to count. And from engineering management, I have an engineering degree. So I mean, I know how some things work, and I've been in the weeds enough with certain things that I could walk in with my own preconceived notions and answers. But my favorite place to facilitate from is a point of ignorance. Like, you all have a problem to solve here. You have a bunch of expertise in the room, from engineering, from superintendents, from trades, working together to try to come up with the best possible plan for how this thing's going to work. Tell me about it. And I'm going to ask maybe some probing questions. But I try to catch myself when I inject my own bias or my own solutions. Like, from a facilitation point of view, it's really like, is the team able to explain what they're thinking and where they're headed and how this is going to work and how they're going to make it work to satisfy my curiosity? Then that they've got it. right? And you learn
Mm.
you learn something in the process, which is really fun. So I think it's a really powerful place to be, to come at it from a point of curiosity and from a point of, not assuming you know the answer, even if you think you do. Uh,
Yeah.
maybe especially if you think you do. And leading the team through a discussion, and finding out more. It is, and a lot of people respond to that. A lot of people want to share their knowledge and what they've already thought about and how they're approaching this thing, right? So that can open up a lot of avenues.
That's a really great point. I'm not going to rate this, but if I had more time, um, this brings up for me um, another discussion that we had with Marianne, who works for me occasionally as well. And in that discussion, Marianne says, and I think this is something she says often, but a schedule is a great tool to call bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
Um, excuse me. So curiosity for your own sake of curiosity, but it could also be curiosity for,
Mm-hmm.
is this right? Like, walk me through your logic and on how you think this is going to
Yeah.
work. So,
Yeah,
uh,
absolutely. And vice versa. Like, here's the way it's calculating out. What are we missing here? Like, is there something we haven't considered that we need to figure out more deeply to figure out where the BS is happening?
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
exactly right.
Mm-hmm.
So, good tool for that. Thanks. Okay, so let's keep going. Here we go. Set high standards for their work. Okay, here we go. I'm gonna get on my soapbox here. Um, Jiro Uno. I don't know if you guys have heard of Jiro Ono, probably not, but he is an 85-year-old sushi chef. And he is known the world over as an absolute master in this world. So there's a couple of things that's interesting about this. You can see he's got a 10-seat bar in Tokyo. There's an 8-month waiting list, 3 Michelin stars. You can see a picture of Barack Obama eating sushi there. So a couple of things. Number one, he decided to become a master at sushi. Like, this is not like he became a master of quantum mechanics, I don't know, something that maybe would have a bigger impact on the world. He decided on becoming a master of sushi, and this has created an incredible story for him. So I think what I'm aiming for here is to show that aiming to be impeccable, aiming to deliver high quality work, not just to get it done. Again, it kind of steps into this idea of owning the role a little bit more.
Hmm.
But I feel like this is something that again, I don't want to toot my own horn, but I I believe in my work. Like, I take time to craft things that I'm proud of, that I feel confident in to put out into the world, like this amazing slide. So one of the things that I talk about, again, specifically for schedulers over and over, and we can move that, is this idea of the attention to detail.
Hmm.
And setting high standards, I think, in scheduling in this incredible mountain of data that we're used to managing, I think this attention to detail is a really important part of being a good scheduler, of setting high standards for your attention to detail,
Hmm.
for your ensuring that you have really scrutinized things. You've got all the right calendars. You've got, you've got a coherent activity ID scheme. Your constraints are proper. We can talk about some of these specific things a little bit here. But to me, the attention to detail comes into this idea of setting high standards for your work.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts? And again, anybody who wants to add some thoughts to this in the chat, please feel free to participate, throw something out there.
Yeah. So, I mean, I love the example you used for the sushi chef, because especially in the lean realm, all things point back to Japan. But beyond
Okay.
that, you know, just I don't know anything about him in particular, but looking at his picture and the accolades and the approach, my bet is that, you know, the world looks at him as a master, and he probably looks at himself as a lifelong learner and practitioner.
Hmm.
And sticks with the idea of no matter what he knows about making sushi that his customers will adore and want to go out of their way to eat, there's always more to learn in that exchange and that relationship with the customer and how they're consuming what he's creating. And I bet he lives the ideal that, you know, perfection is something we strive for, but we never actually attain. And so we're constantly seeking how is this working right now for the people that are using what I'm putting out there? How can I get feedback on what I'm doing to make it better? This is my assumption of a high standard. What feedback am I getting from the people who are using the thing I'm creating? And is there a way I can improve it to help serve my customers, the customers of my information, right, better in what they're going to do with it? Without knowing anything about him, I bet those are all things that are just natural to his existence. And I think feed right into this point of, you know, we set high standards for what we do, and we're constantly seeking to improve. We're constantly seeking feedback from the people who are using what we create and the people we serve on a project, and then challenging ourselves, how can we do that better day after day after day?
It's a good point. So you mentioned Japanese. So there in Japan, there is this concept
Yeah.
of something called Kaizen, right?
Kaizen, yeah.
Kaizen. So it is, let's see if I can write it, constant and never ending improvement.
Yeah. And it's one of those things that has been like turned into an event thing in some in the lean industry, where we're going to get a bunch of people together and focus on one thing and do a Kaizen event to improve this, and then great, we're done. But I think the way you have it represented here is really what it means is like, I as an individual am constantly seeking to learn and improve how I do my craft. That's really what's at the underline of it.
Yeah, I think I really want to draw attention to what you said here about, you know, how am I serving others, or what do others see? So I might think that, you know, like I said, oh, I pay really close attention, and I make sure that I've got it, you know, all lined up the way I think is the right way. Maybe bring in a little bit of humility as well to ask others, like, is this helpful? Is this the best way to do this? Am I serving you in my attention to detail or in my high standards? Is this helping you, or is this actually creating? Because
Yeah.
sometimes people who are so focused on high standards cause problems too. Let's just leave it at that.
If it becomes a look, this is the way we do it, don't question it, then yes, it can cause problems.
Yes.
I think the one other thought here in that thread is that, especially for project schedules, they usually serve different people in different ways, right? Like a project executive is going to use different things from a schedule than a foreman. And so we really want to pay attention to the different customers and the different customer roles that are interacting with what we create, and paying attention to what each one needs. And they may be different. And then we have the challenge of how do we serve different customers with our product? So I think that's an important piece here. What do others see, and who are the others that we need to pay attention to?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm going to throw it up to those who are in this chat with us. What do you guys think? Is it possible? Is it possible to deliver high quality work? You know, that's the other thing I'm going to bring up is we're all aware of the pressures that everyone's under in these environments. There's always a time crunch. There's always a crisis. Is it possible to do your highest quality work? What do you guys think? Anybody want to say anything in the chat about that? We'll come back to it. Let's see if we get some. Let's see if we get some.
Yeah, I'll keep an eye on it if you want to go to the next bullet.
Okay, so number 4, manage up the chain of command.
Mm,
I read a really great book this summer called Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink and Leaf. I'm sorry, I forget Leaf's last name. But I know Jocko Willink because I've listened for years to the Tim Ferriss podcast, and Jocko Willink is a guy that's showed up on the Tim Ferriss podcast more than a few times. And he's a former military leader, like I believe he's a Navy SEAL, and or leader of Navy SEALs. And there was a great chapter in the book that really struck home to me, this idea of managing up the chain of command and influencing up the chain of command as well.
mhm.
Okay, so number 1, I just want to say I don't love a lot of the military language. So chain of command, we might not be familiar with that concept in our project environments, whatever. Let's just call it managing upward in general. I'll give you a little story that I feel like from my own experience kind of helped me learn this lesson early on in my career. Early on in my career, I was a very junior 20-something project manager at American Express in their call center here in Toronto. And I was managing 12, 13, 14 different projects. And my boss would find me at all these inopportune times, and he would ask me straight up, what's going on with this thing? And I wouldn't ever be prepared. I just didn't know at the moment. I would need to go ask. So he'd be like, what's the status of this thing? Is it going to end? Are we going to deliver it on Friday? And I'd be like, oh, that's one of the 12 projects I'm managing, and I'm actually focused on these 3 that are in crisis. So I don't really know right now. I'll get back to you. And then I'd see him at lunch, and he would ask me, okay, project ABC, did we get the delivery on this thing? And I'd be like, I don't know that either. Like I just was completely caught off guard every time, and I felt really inadequate with him. So I finally kind of sat down and said, I think I might have got some advice from somebody about this, but like I knew this wasn't going good. I felt like I was looking bad, and I don't think I was instilling any confidence in him, even though I was really working hard to manage all these projects. So I did something at the time that to me seemed like a really good idea. Today, this might be a no-brainer, but all I did was I created a small project report for him. There were no project reports at the time. And I did a 1-page for each project. I kind of designed it. I was like, I got some milestones, I got some problems, I got some check boxes on what we did last week. A standard project report. Again, we didn't have all these tools. This is like 20 years ago. We didn't have all these fancy tools that we have nowadays that crank these things out. So I created this thing, and then I went to him and I said, well, look, here's a report. Could we sit down next week on Thursday? And I want to show you, and I want to walk you through this. And he's like, great. How about we do this every Thursday? I was like, yes, let's do it every Thursday. And I'll just update this report. And it completely changed our dynamic because he could see now that I was actually doing all this work. I knew where things were. I just didn't have it, in the lunchroom or coming out of the bathroom, whenever he would catch me. I put together the report. We set a standard meeting. I managed him basically. So I went and told him, this is how I'm going to report this information to you going forward. He didn't ask me to do it. He was happy to just keep pestering me. I managed him and said, this is how we should do it. He liked it so much, he took the template and he passed it around and said, everybody should use this template. So it's a very simple example that I got in my bones from a long time ago. I was managing up the chain of command is trying to make sure, in my understanding now is that my boss was also being pestered by his boss. His boss was worried about these things and was asking him, and he was pestering me. So by doing this, generating that report, it kind of resolved everything all the way up, which I didn't really know about at the time until later. But that's
Yeah.
the idea, is like, how can we, how can we get our leaders, if they're on our backs, how can we get them off our backs? How can we be proactive to solve these problems? Because we might not be thinking up another level. What are some thoughts on that?
Yeah, I totally agree. I haven't seen anybody pipe up in the chat yet, so don't be bashful, folks. But I mean, I think, one of my hard lessons learned, I've been in many, many different roles on projects, right? I started out as a young project engineer, project management, working for others, having bosses. I've worked as the project lead for a healthcare owner. So, theoretically pretty high up on the chain of command of a project anyway.
Yeah.
And now I work as a consulting coach. Um, and one of the biggest transitions I've had to make from being in the chair that theoretically controls the chain of command on the project to being in a coaching role is nobody works for me. No, like there is nobody in my org chart on a project. My entire existence on a project is how well I can influence people to think about how they're working, what they're doing, think about what's working, what's not working, maybe sometimes come up with recommendations or lead them through recommendations. And so my assumption is that for many folks working in the scheduling realm, that is a very similar existence, right? There's not that many people in project execution who report to you. And so developing this ability to influence, to point out good ideas, to lead people through a conversation that almost makes them think it was their idea. Like, your boss had the idea of doing this thing every week, which you were probably already thinking about, but maybe didn't say. And so it was your idea that turned into his idea, which makes it, more sticky for him.
Yeah.
So I think all of those skills are crucial on projects because there are so many different moving pieces, and the way you win people over is through influence. And it's frankly more effective. Like, I think the kind of management where you tell people what to do is not as effective as learning this sort of influencing people towards a good idea. And
Okay.
then they realize the benefit of it, right? How it's a win-win. So yeah, I think this is big, and I think it ties in with what we talked about earlier, right? So there's the chain of command, and then there's also the customer. In order to deal with a customer who is buying something from you and they don't realize what they're doing, you have to be very influential to get them on the right track and
Yeah.
take them to a path of what they're going to expect from scheduling is actually going to be more productive.
Yes, agree with those things. So I like that idea of influencing towards a good idea rather than telling.
Yeah,
And then of course, like we're talking about dotted lines versus direct lines versus
sure.
collaborators or people in our circle. So
Yeah.
thank you, Breno. Breno says sometimes the chain of command are like internal clients too. Yes, exactly right.
Yep.
They also need to see their mistakes or the value of what you're doing, planning. Exactly right. Internal, external, dotted line, that kind of like, org structure with the dotted line, the
Hmm.
direct reports versus that dotted line, or just other people. I'm great at drawing, right?
I feel like
Brad's.
we're mapping out some football plays here or something.
Yeah, go left, and then Christian, go over here.
You don't want to put me in any catching situation. I'll drop the damn ball.
Yeah, so Brad says project management is not doing anything, but rather getting things done.
Yeah.
Yes, and there's a difference, right? Things getting done versus uh, doing, staying busy. Yeah.
It's actually it's one of the things I rail about a little bit in certain circles with certain conversations. Like, I think the label of project manager is a misnomer.
Mm,
It is when it's done well, it's really managing and leading people. And then there are other functions that we ask project managers to do. Like sometimes project managers buy things or plan things or whatever. But it's really like managing the project team and leading the project team is a much more core function of what we're doing, like rather than the project itself.
I think we're going to talk about that some more too.
Sweet.
So, okay, so number 5, build systems. What in the world am I talking about? Build systems. Okay, so here's the idea. As as the CEO, owner of leader of Plan Academy, this is actually something I am striving to do in my business all the time, is to build systems. The idea is that if we create a process that says step 1, 2, 3, 4, and we follow that process every time, then number one, we have consistency. So we have a consistent process we can follow through on. But actually, the most important thing about building systems is it takes the thinking out of it. So if I do all the thinking up front, like how am I going to fix this process problem? And I come up with a process, and it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then the next time that thing comes up, I don't have to think about it and make decisions and rehash it. It's like it's done. It's thought about. I feel like I could do a better job explaining that, but I will tell you, for many business owners, having systems in place is vital. It's vital, especially when new people come in and new people go out. We have these kind of SOPs. What I find, though, in projectized worlds is because they're not businesses and we don't have people thinking about working on the business, as we throw these things around in business language, there's less people thinking about systems. There's more people just trying to handle whatever is on the ground, whatever's in the inbox, whatever's here right now. And the whole idea here is to take some time to be more proactive, to think about how we can streamline things, we can make things easier, how we can, again, maybe it's part of managing up the chain of command, but just having systems in place to handle all sorts of stuff, consistency, etc.
Yeah, absolutely. It's it's an interesting phenomenon. One of the interesting things when you talk about soft skills, for example, there's like you would never imagine that picture that you had up before, a manufacturer just setting a bunch of workers loose on the fabrication floor and saying, go build something. Right. And you're all experts, you're all well trained, you all know what you're doing.
Yeah.
Go build it. You can bet there's a lot of process engineering and system design and all kinds of things that go into it before we put labor to the task. And there's this weird phenomenon where in project delivery and some other realms, we have this thought in our head of soft costs, which is usually related to the knowledge work piece of it, whether that's engineering, planning, or whatever else. And there's this assumption that knowledge workers, who are usually the soft cost folks, just know what they're doing and know how to work together. So we don't need to build systems. And it is so false. Anytime we get groups of people together to interact to create a product, you need some standard work. And then the lean aspect of it is, can you design that standard work and can you make it so that it is continuously improvable? Then it becomes a lean thing as well. So I totally agree. Like, we spend too much time in the quadrant thing that you're about to go to.
I was going to do this quadrant thing.
Yeah.
While I do the quadrant thing, I would like to ask the group, do we need more processes, better processes, or do we have too many processes that are too convoluted and difficult? Because as we're talking about this, I recognize that there is also that side of the fence of like, we do have processes, but man, they suck and I hate going through them.
Yeah.
So I'd like us to consider both sides of this, I guess. Okay, so what I was going to draw, this is again coming from, you've probably seen this before, this idea of building systems. It's not just building systems that I'm talking about here, but it's maybe finding the time to plan and be proactive. And so what we have is we have things that are urgent, things that are not urgent. So I'll just say not urgent. Terrible penmanship, guys. Let's do red. And then things that are important. Things that are not important. When I first saw this thing, I really loved this idea of where do we spend our time? Where are we spending our time? They kind of have this like 1, 2, 3, 4 different quadrants. So stuff that's urgent and important, these are the fires that we have to put out. That's a fire, not a tree. That's a fire. Okay. So fires, crises, deadlines, that kind of stuff. Stuff that's urgent and not important. This is busy work. This is spending time on your phone to make sure you don't lose your streak on Duolingo. That kind of stuff. These apps create this like urgency. You need to get on the app because you're going to lose your streak. That's my example of that. Okay, so things that are urgent, not urgent, but important are things like planning, are things about strategizing, things we never seem to have time to do.
System building.
System building.
Continuous improving.
Yeah. Improvements. Next time you can write. And then things that are not important and not urgent. I can't think of what's not important and not urgent, but
I mean, we do them.
yeah, time wasters, trivia, busy work, phone calls, time wasters. So let's just call them time wasters.
Oftentimes, there's an element of what certain people in an organization think are important versus what's really important as well. And what we think is urgent versus what is important. Too many meetings. Greg put in the chat, too many meetings.
Where are we going to put too many meetings? Urgent and not important? Yeah.
Depends on who's driving the urgency. But yeah, there is an element of we find ourselves sometimes doing things with urgency that really, when we get down to it, aren't.
Absolutely. Thank you, Greg. Yeah. Appreciate that. So the whole idea is to see if we can notice where we might be spending our time. And I guarantee you that people who are in projects are spending a lot of time here in quadrant 1. There always seems to be fires. There's always a crisis. There's always a fire. There's always something that was needed to be on somebody's desk yesterday. It's not done yet. So I don't want to be naive and recognize that it's really difficult to find time to be in quadrant 2 for a lot of people. But also what I think we can do is if we find time to be more in quadrant 2, we actually might have fewer fires. And like if we can find a way to think about things that maybe strategize about fires so they don't happen again, or so that we're better prepared for them. So there can be a whole element of preparedness for this, preparing for the next fire. How can we mitigate it? Yeah.
Gabby added, time management is key in setting the right expectations. So
yes, thank you, Gabby. Thank you. So that's where I'm trying to instill here this idea that schedulers could find some time to be more strategic for their processes, for their own work, to kind of make this quadrant smaller. That's the idea.
Yeah. I think that, the learning what is really important also, just connects the dots back to the prior things we were talking about in terms of defining the role owning and defining the role,
Yes.
and the conversations we had about internal and external customers. Like, it's hard to define what's really important to people if we don't have really clear understanding of what's important in the role and how people are really going to use and need to use the information we're creating. So the more we can understand that, I think the better we can define what's really important in the work. I mean, there's all this there's all this management and productivity literature out there that talks about like essentialism, like focus on the
Yes.
3 really important things you got to get done every day, and then everything else is noise. And
Yeah.
trying to, manage your time more towards those 3 really important things, or maybe it's 4 or whatever, but really getting down to the essential key things that that drive value to people.
Absolutely right. And like we were talking about earlier, maybe also questioning processes like,
Yeah.
hey, is anybody using this thing? Like, I'm spending
Yes.
2 hours on Friday to put this report together, and it just sits on the SharePoint drive, but I
Yep.
haven't seen anybody ever open it. What's this
Yeah.
for? Is this important? And just again, questioning, taking the time to question those things and ask the tough questions sometimes.
I think that's a really great point. So many big organizations that I work with that hire me as their lean person, they're really good at adding processes. They're really bad at ever taking any away. And then people just become overburdened with stuff like that it doesn't really get used. And you
Yeah.
do need to be able to challenge it. Like, we do this. Can anybody tell me why we actually do this and who's the customer of this stuff we're doing? And if nobody can answer that question, get rid of it. If somebody actually needed it, they'll cry, they'll speak up, right? And then you can always bring it back. But being able to deduct things is really critical.
Yeah. I like the way Joy here left a comment tying it all back. Be curious about
Yeah.
your systems. So
Yeah.
tying number 2 and number 5 together. Thanks, Joy. Okay, let's keep going. Here we go. Get out of their seats. Project schedulers get out of their seats to be highly effective. All right, what do I mean get out of their seats? Like, again, I think I have as I've kind of gathered from some of my conversations with younger planners. I sit in my seat, they give me the work, I do the work, I generate the report or I generate the schedule, and I go home. That's what they hired me for. And what we're trying to get to here is like, you're part of a team. Let's go meet them. Let's go find out what's going on in this organization, in this project. Let's go have some conversations, not because it's important, not because it's important to me to get this report done, but maybe you just want to go and have coffee with the contract management people. Brad,
Yep.
what's going on, Brad? Brad says, too many never leave the office. Get out on site, learn how stuff is done, makes you a better planner and scheduler. Thank you, Brad. That's the whole point here.
Makes
You
you a better.
absolutely have to go out with the guys and tour the site. And you know what?
Yeah.
The other guy that never leaves the office is the engineer that invented half this stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
In my previous life, when I built the Darlington nuclear plant, we had drain systems that drained uphill. And I'd call a guy in Toronto and say, you need to come out to Darlington, which is like a 45-minute drive. Oh, I can't leave the office. Well, then, you know what? And it was before digital photographs. It's like, well, the thing you got me doing is in the basement, 30 feet below grade, and you expected to go to like the on-site sump. It ain't happening unless we put in a pump. So like, get a grip. So sorry,
Yeah.
that's my rant. Like,
Brad, that's one of many. I can sense there'll be some more.
It,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think I think getting out on site and seeing how stuff is done makes you a better anything. Whether your role is planning or scheduling or engineering, or you're a project leader, or safety person, or anything, like learning what the people that are building this stuff actually have to go through to make it work, I think makes you a better every role on the project. Yeah.
I also found when you went out with the guys and you actually talk to them, like don't just walk out with the project manager or the guy that owns the company. Go
Yeah.
talk to the general foreman or the other guys. And hi, I'm the scheduler. I'm the guy that puts this thing together that you all laugh at and say, okay, what do you want me to do with this?
Yep.
And then you get together and you get a better understanding of what they do and a better respect for them, and they get a better respect for you because you can reflect in your schedule what you learned from the guys in the field.
Yeah. And if you like going back to the discussion about being sort of a translator, then if you're actually there with the trade, you can ask them, is there anything I can do to help make your life better? Right? You get these schedules from us, you get this paperwork. Is there anything I can do to help make it more informative or more useful to you? It's hard to ask that question if you don't know the person.
Yeah. So Christian, I want to bring up this idea too. So again, guys, we don't want to sound preachy, like walk the site, meet people. I don't want to sound preachy. Maybe you're already doing that. That's great. But I think there is a really important realization behind this. And Christian and I have talked about this before, and it's the idea of work being transactional versus relational.
Yeah.
Go
Yeah.
ahead, Christian. You can talk about that.
Yeah. So I think this is a fundamental part of what we're trying to do with project delivery and lean, is that the conventional sort of old school way of approaching projects is if I can scope everything perfectly, if I can buy everything perfectly, then it just becomes a transaction. You do these things that are perfectly described for you in this document. You tell me how much you're going to charge me for it. I'll pay you for your work. We'll have some inspectors check the quality, and then we're done. And on most projects of any complexity, that is just not true. Nobody can really anticipate every possible thing that's going to happen on a project to make things really work in a transactional way like that. And so the relational approach is like, we have a common goal in mind. It is to build this thing for this amount of money in this time and be productive and be effective. And we need to hire the best people we can, and then create the relationships with those people so they can communicate about what we need from each other, how we work together, and how each of our specialties can support the team in being successful. And most jobs are somewhere in the middle of, or on one, somewhere in the spectrum between more transactional and more relational. But I feel like the more we make our work relational, like, here's what I bring to the table, here's what you bring to the table, how do we work together, what do you need from me, what do I need from you, how do we make this work and be more productive? That's where the magic happens of actually being successful.
Yeah.
When we treat it as I'm going to throw some stuff at you, send it over the wall, and then you throw something back at me, and we treat it transactionally, that's where things fall apart. And we can send people things they don't actually need or use. We get things from people that are wrong, and we never really communicate in an effective way about how to make it better.
And it's unfortunate, but this is how a lot of things go. Like, I remember on this project where I was working for the contractor as a scheduler, and then the owner had a representative from a delay claims kind of company, claims avoidance company. And rather than us have conversations like, hey, we submitted the schedule, you rejected it. Could we talk about it? And they said, well, no, just read the report. And then they would generate a 200-page report.
Yeah.
And we were expected to kind of like scour the report to figure out exactly what this was about. Like, talk about life-sucking work. But also very much rooted in this kind of like transactional style of working with people or working together. And that this happens, guys. I know you all have examples of this. This happens all the time, right? Well, give me the report. I need the report. It'll be in the documentation. So where do we have the opportunity to get away from that? Yeah, there's a report. Here's a report. Let me sit down and tell you my biggest concern. It was actually bullet 62. Bullet 62 was the most important thing. If we revise that, then we're probably golden. Like, let's have a conversation. So
Yeah. I just thought of a really frustrating good example for this if I can steal another couple of minutes of time that
you can.
happened recently on a project. I was coaching this very large multi-billion-dollar project, and they did some things very well. They created a really nice huge trailer farm on the site where people were co-located. So they brought the trades in, they had the client there, this was through a large multinational EPCM who was doing the engineering, construction management, and other things. And I was sitting in this meeting with the client and the EPCM reps, and they were dissecting a schedule that a trade had prepared for them for the trade scope of work. And they were building a list of things. They were like asking questions, making a list of things they needed to go through, to ask the trade about this and why is that and all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, the person that built this schedule is literally sitting on the other side of this door. Why are they not in this room right now so you can actually all talk to each other and just go through this, right? They were going down this path of, we're going to make a list, we're going to send it off to them by email and then wait for that person to respond. I'm like, this is insanity. Like, you have people sitting next to each other for a reason. Just work it out. Like, it doesn't have to be this formal, crazy, ship it over the wall type process, right? And they were just stuck in that
100%.
transactional model, right? And they hadn't even thought about it.
Yeah, 100%. If somebody's around the corner or in the next room, like, grab them, pull them in. Let's talk about it. I'll bet you a lot of people do that already.
Yeah.
But the whole idea is, and I think we've said this in other calls, is like people are the things that make projects happen. It's people. So we have to think a little bit more relationally, even though we have all these tools and things that turn everything into transactions. Let's not forget that we're all people in this
Yeah.
process.
Just picking up on Greg's comment real quick. He left a comment in the chat about kind of being guilty of this because he works from home and doesn't get out to the site that often. And that is a new reality for most of us. Most
Yeah.
project teams I work with are distributed. Some people work from home, some people are at the site, some people are in other countries. And so that happens across the board. And there are still ways that we can do this, even if we're not physically in the same space together. It just takes more effort and planning. Like, I still
That's
try
right.
to connect foreman on a site to an engineer or to a planner, use video cameras, make them accessible, create those direct conversations, put things on the calendar to have a Thursday morning coffee together, even if we're having coffee in different places. So there are ways around working from home or working remotely, and we just need to put the same thinking and effort into it that we're doing for other things.
Absolutely. And, again, not to toot my own horn, but like, we have a distributed team here at Plant Academy. We've got people all over the world, and something we tried. Haven't done this, but in the last year, we've had two just like pizza parties online. So we just get together, everybody got pizza, and we found some fun Jackbox type games to play online. Like, again, it wasn't the same as having everybody in the room, but it was the reality, and it worked
Yeah.
really well.
Yep.
Okay, so this one is how we're going to wrap this up. And this is a combination, pay it forward. What does that mean? Well, basically, I think I'm just encouraging you, again, step into your role and find out, where are your people? Like, where are they hanging out? I'll tell you, for me, one of the things we've been doing here is we're part of AACE, the Association for the Advancement of Cost Engineering. There's a Toronto chapter just this week. Me and Rama and Faraz, we went to the Toronto chapter meeting and did some networking, saw some people, hung out, just had a beer, find out what's going on locally. It's a great experience. Like I love it. We go to conferences regularly. This is just an opportunity to find out where are your people. It's not exactly pay it forward as though like I'm saying you need to, train other people or whatnot, but like you can bring yourself to other people. It helps other people, especially new people to the industry. Just you showing up and taking interest in them and talking to them and commiserating with how difficult it is, those kinds of things. So
Mhm.
I again think people should find organizations. There is AACE, there is CMAA in the US, the Construction Management Association of America. There is, I might be wrong, but RICS for cost. I forget what those guys do.
I gotta plug
Um,
the
cost,
lean construction organizations in here as well.
yeah, lean. There's lean organizations. What's the lean organization?
So in the US, and I think there's a Canadian equivalent as well, as the Lean Construction Institute is a big one. They're the ones that have sort of regional communities of practice of people that get together and are thinking about this, thinking about project delivery and how to make it better.
Yeah,
Those are also good places to engage with peers and people that are of like minds of how do we improve roles on projects and support projects and make them more relational.
yeah. There are great conferences for schedulers. Someone just mentioned, thank you, Gabby. Yes, PCE is Project Controls Expo.
Mm.
They have a conference coming up in October in Washington, D.C. I don't think we're going to make it. We've been there the past 2 years, though. We're not going to make it this year. And actually, I think this is actually pictures from last year, the year before at PCE. And just go out, get involved, find your organizations, just inhabit this role a little bit more. Bring yourself to it a little bit more. Figure out where it can go. All this networking and whatnot. Also, it's great. You meet people, you find new opportunities. Maybe you find new roles. Maybe you find opportunities to advance or to move in new directions.
Yeah. One other little thing related here, I think, is within a project team. One of the other things I really like to do is, people show up with different roles and job descriptions, but everybody also brings a whole bunch of other skills and talents to the table. And another way to pay it forward within project teams is like, let people know the other things you're good at. Like, yes, your job on a project might be to build and maintain the schedule and how people are interfacing with the schedule, but like maybe you're an Excel guru. And if people know that and you're open to them asking you questions if they get stuck with something, you can start to help solve other, people's other problems beyond what you're technically hired for. I think I see a lot of teams where they make those kinds of things visible, and they can actually learn who they can, go to and lean on and support each other outside of their normal job descriptions. That becomes a big way of also, paying some other things forward within project teams too.
Great idea. Great idea. What else are you good at? Putting it forward again, owning your skills, stepping into that role a little bit more. I'm just going to do a time check. Okay, so we are about 10 minutes past the hour, and I think this is where we're going to stop. I'm just going to put back 7 Habits of Highly Effective Schedulers. Let us know in the chat what you thought. Was this a good discussion? Is there any place we should have gone, we didn't go, or anything along those lines? We'd love to hear what you thought and what else you might want to see, because we're definitely doing more of these. We're doing this live on YouTube. We're streaming this to YouTube. This is the first time we've done that. And we'll definitely check the comments there and find out what people thought over on the YouTubes. Okay. Christian, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate you hanging out with me, jamming on this topic. Am I allowed to say jam?
Yeah, you're allowed to say anything you want. It's your podcast or it's your webinar.
Fair enough. Fair
Own your
enough.
role, man.
I'm
Own
gonna
your role.
step into my own role a little bit more.
Yeah, no, it's always a pleasure. I love chatting with you about these things.
Thank you. Thank you for that. I appreciate you being here. Everybody who joined us, thank you so much. Appreciate all your feedback and participation and even just being here and showing up. So we'll wrap it up there. Thank you. Check the schedule, by the way, for those of you who are here, check the schedule for the next time we do this, and we'll see you again soon. Have a
Okay.
great rest of your Friday.